Okay, good. My name is Gustav Rosén. It's an honor to be speaking in front of you. I'm an integration architect by heart and also the CEO of Entiros Integrations. I'm going to talk very quickly about how to build the right APIs and how to build them right. I know that a lot of you are here today because you want to get knowledge and you want to get contacts in order to build your shiny APIs. And one thing there, I think that's really important, and there were a lot of good topics yesterday about this, is building the right APIs. So let's talk a bit briefly about that first. This is very business specific. So you need to think about what your API experience should be for your user, right? And then it's about target user group, the needs of the users, treating the API as a product, etc., etc. But I thought I'd bring one good example from Gantt, one of our clients, and that's the online store stock check. So this really shows what an API can bring for the consumer of theirs. So Gantt decided that they wanted to allow the consumers to check physical store stock. So to find, for instance, a shirt and to be able to pick up that shirt on the way home. That's really good if you're leaving your office and you're going to party in the evening, for instance. So what we helped them to do was to build APIs for online store stock check. And by doing this API-driven, we were able to launch it on a first market and then to have really good reuse on that API on each consecutive market. And you can see the time to market dropping for each market. This was also really good because it allowed Gantt not only to launch in the web channel, but they could reuse this API downstream in mobile channels. So good not only for market rollouts, but also for channel rollouts. This meant cake for both business and IT. That was a very quick one on the right API. So now let's talk about how to build APIs right. I have two quotes that I think are really good. The first one is that if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. So if you would compare this to a city, if you would type in our strategic APIs and events that will transform our business, and you get your hits, then you know where you're going, right? So you have had your discussion with business. But then, if you don't know where you are, a map won't really help. So you need to place yourself on this map. You need to understand your current state of your environment. And going back to the city analogy, this means that you need to dig into your environment. You need to go to parts of this city that you have never been in before. And you see that shining building is still there at the horizon, but this is the old city. This is the legacy that you have to deal with. And although we get really good API portals for our REST APIs, we get our Kafka event streams and others, a lot of stuff, the majority, maybe 90% is still legacy, right? So we need to manage that. And it was nice to see Maersk this morning talking about their legacy protocols. So how do we do this? Well, to know your current state, you need to have some practical way of describing it. So let's continue on the Gantt example. What you see here is Gantt's open application network. It's a visualization of their applications, their services, and their references. And I hope this demo is good now, because I'm going to show you how this is done. What is an open application network for a start? Well, since we need to cover all our APIs, events, and flows, not only REST-based ones, we need to have a way of describing it that is by any team, for any team, and that is tech and protocol agnostic. So let's use a really simple concept model here with applications, reference to services, the APIs of other applications. That's it. Let's not make it more complicated than that. And then we can display an up-to-date view of our integration landscape. So this is the anatomy of Gantt as a company. And what you can see here is that we modeled their API platform as one of these systems. This shows a tiered architecture of APIs. And you see the channels that Gantt have for consumer applications at the top and base systems at the bottom. When we turn on references here, it gets quite interesting. That's the use of the services. So it's the consumption of the APIs in their landscape. And what's really good here, we're looking at Starlify, the application that we're launching today. Coming back to that, is that you get IDs on everything. So you can use those IDs in your Elk stack for monitoring, or for logging, or for any monitoring application to get end-to-end visibility. Why is this good? What is it used for? Well, when you have structured data, you can start analyzing it. You can restructure it, and you can look at your business from other perspectives. So what we see here is a clear view of the consumers at the bottom and the applications providing services at the top. So we can actually see the level of communication in the company. Turning off the references, we get more clear pictures on the API traffic, how it's channeled between applications. Quick demo. So what's the next step? Well, now you know your current state. You have full control of where you are. Now it's time to set your target state. So you need to take those strategic APIs, events, etc., that should support your business, and create a model where you have your target. So this is not about current state, but getting your target state aligned. And since you have full control, you can start describing this to quality as well. We have the quality manager of Certified Integrator here. Good that you're present. Certified Integrator is a standard that was launched last year. It's becoming an ISO 17024 standard. So what network technicians became 10 years ago, we're getting for API developers now. Certified Integrator prescribes 10 points for each API and flow. The key is to make it reliable, self-served, reuse, and scalable. It also prescribes 5 points for API landscapes. Quick view on this one, you can find it on certifiedintegrator.com, or talk to Rickard, that's here. The key things that we fulfill here with Starlify is the 2 first points, so patterns and identifiers for everything in our landscape. That is crucial. Then we can start talking about information, mediation, scaling, and all the other ones. So what can we do when we have a current state and a target state? Well, we can start walking towards the target. So most of our clients are now working in an agile fashion, bi-weekly sprints towards our target landscape. And with Starlify, we can highlight what we do in each sprint. So for instance, the upcoming 2 weeks, we might be addressing that online store stock check API. That makes a really clear view for all the developers. Half of the time's gone. So now comes the second part. Where to start? How long does it take to get a current state description of your company? I'm going to show you now how you can do it in less than 4 weeks. So it's really fast. How you can do it in a business of any size, and how you can keep it updated. This all starts with your organization. So understanding your organization and describing your organization. So what you do is that you map your divisions. You might have logistics, marketing, manufacturing, IT. For the IT division, you map out your teams. So there might be a web team, a marketing team, a mobility team, etc. And for each team, you describe the team members. So now you have your users in Starlify. You have access to all the knowledge that is in your developer and business community. This is key. What you do next, maybe 1 week later, is that you find your first view of your open application network. These members in Starlify have now submitted their applications and their APIs. There's no log analysis or agent hocus pocus here. It's people that know what they're doing that submit this information. And when you look at this from a service perspective, you see the APIs that the applications bring. And the third week, you get the references. So what is my application using? What APIs am I dependent on? What event streams am I dependent on? What file integrations am I dependent on? And as you saw before, maybe at the third or the fourth week, you can start analyzing this data. You can do iterations with teams and so on. And within 30 days, you're up and running with your current state. So how can this be done in a business of any size? Will it take 4 weeks in a small business? Will it take 4 weeks in a really large business with thousands of developers? Well, since you're using a distributed tool, a distributed approach, it doesn't matter how large the company is. You can distribute this to the divisional managers, they distribute it to the team managers, and if you have 400 teams, for instance, the size of Volvo Cars in Sweden, it takes 30 days to do it. So that's our promise to you. How do you keep it fresh? How do you input the data? Well, either you use the web UI. Most developers don't like web UIs. So we have adopted the same approach as in API portals. The same way that we can now submit Swagger files through DevOps tool build chains to API portals, we can push our open application network snippets from the teams into Starlify. So instead of using Swagger YAML, we use Tagger YAMLs to describe our dependencies. That YAML can be checked in with your source code in your development team. You own it. You're in control of your dependencies. You push it at your builds to Starlify, and you get a completely fresh view of your landscape. You can also use the APIs, of course, as part of your build chain the way you want it. But then there's a specific challenge here. How do we find and reference what other teams have built? How do we know what APIs are in the landscape? Well, we can go into the web UI again, do searching, trying to find what's there. But a much better approach, also adopted for the developer community, is to use Slack. So we have built a Slack app that is integrated with Starlify, and it uses fuzzy searching. So if you know that your application is using a specific URI or a file path or anything else, just post it into Slack, or you post the name of the API, and you get a response with input for your YAML tagger to be produced. This can also be used by project managers and business managers, of course. If you want to know the scope of a specific project, type the name of the project, you get all services that's included in that project, and you can collaborate around that. We're really proud to be here today and also to launch Starlify. This has been used in production for 3 years by our clients, but now it's an open application. It's a SaaS. That was released yesterday. So you can go to starlify.entiros.com. You can sign up, completely free to use. It's a freemium model. You can use the API, push all the data that you want to it, for instance, from your existing platforms, to visualize and get a grasp of your network. And since this does not really require so much input, it's more getting it distributed and getting the developers to work with it. You can start doing that today. It will take very little of your time as integration managers or as API architects. So push this out in your developer community, get the descriptions, and get control. That's it. Thank you.